Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We're really excited to have so many classrooms starting to tune in. I'm just looking at the YouTube feed, and I can see we've got over 25 classrooms tuning in from different places across North America, Canada, and the US. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining in. Don't forget you can get in on the action, use the chat sidebar, introduce your classroom, send in some questions. We'll make sure that we work some of those in. And then, of course, we're excited to have so many great classrooms joining us on camera from different classrooms across Canada and the US. And this is absolutely one of our favorite virtual field trips. We are heading to Costa Rica. We are visiting the Toucan Rescue Ranch. So they have focused on the care and rehabilitation and release of national wildlife since 2004. So the Toucan Rescue Ranch provides sanctuary while giving treatment, rehabilitation, and when possible, releasing the animals back into their natural environment. They specialize in toucans, sloths, and owls, but have had a large array of wildlife pass through their doors, including weasels, porcupines, cats, kinkajous, parrots, and more. We're so excited to be joined by Denise today. Denise is a volunteer at the Toucan Rescue Ranch, and she is going to share with us all kinds of amazing information about these sloths we've been checking out. Denise, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. I love to teach everybody about sloths and answer any questions and have everybody appreciate these amazing animals.
All right, very cool. So, uh, I mean, it's hard to look away. They're absolutely incredible animals. They're so cute. They're so relaxed. We'd love to learn a little bit more about them, and then we'll turn the students loose and let them fire away with some questions.
Okay, well, I know you gave a little bit of history for the Toucan Rescue Ranch, but originally that's why it's called Toucan Rescue Ranch. Our founder Leslie had planned on just doing birds, but at one point, about 13 years ago, the government approached her and the people who take care of wildlife, and they asked her if she'd be willing to take a sloth. And she hadn't really planned on doing mammals, but they convinced her, and she said, "Okay, I'll take an adult." But guess what? They brought a little ball of fuzziness to her, and that was Millie, and she's still with us. She's now 13 years old, and that was the beginning of many sloths. And the reason that we get sloths is very kind of a sad story. They've all lost their mother somehow. They're orphaned, and mom has either been hit by a car, maybe she tried to climb on a power line and got electrocuted because she thought it was a branch or a vine, or maybe when she came down to go to the bathroom, because they come down out of the tree to go to the bathroom, she was attacked by a dog. So fortunately, whoever came across the mom who was either killed or dying found the babies, and so they were the lucky ones that get a second chance to go back into the trees. Our program is such that we take babies that have been orphaned or animals that have been injured, and we raise them, and then we put them back into the wild, which is the most important thing. Sometimes babies are just found abandoned. We don't know if they fell out of the tree or what. And so once again, we take them and we give them milk when they're teeny tiny. We have to be very careful with that. And we call that our little preschool. And those babies are in little baskets with feeding elements. And then eventually they graduate to elementary school when they're eating a little bit more solid food. And the solid food we give them, as you can see, let's see, is that, oh, that's Camilla. She's eating some flowers. One of their favorites are hibiscus flowers, and also some cooked green beans and carrots. And she's not drinking milk anymore, so she even gets a little bit of scrambled eggs. This type of sloth that you see here, and the majority of sloths that we get here are called Hoffman's two-toed sloths. However, it's very confusing because all sloths have three toes. So the person who called them a two-toed sloth was mixing up their arms with their legs. They don't have four legs, they have two legs and two arms. So we like to call them two-fingered sloths because it's not quite so confusing. The other type of sloth that we have here in Costa Rica is a three-toed or three-fingered sloth. They're very different, and you guys are lucky because we actually have one here. Very rarely do we get these because we're a little higher altitude and a little cooler. This is Luna. our little three-toed or three-fingered sloth. And you can see she's munching on a leaf. This type of sloth only eats leaves. And so they have to go tree to tree and only find particular types of leaves. She's eating her favorite type of leaf, which is called a cecropia, or it's called guarumo here. And so these guys are totally, totally vegetarian. You could actually call them vegan. The other type of sloth that you saw, the two-toed or two-fingered, eats a lot of other stuff. So these guys are really, really special. You guys are, like I said, you're so lucky that we actually have a little three-toed or three-fingered sloth here. She's the kind of sloth that you guys are most familiar with, right? Because I bet a lot of you saw Zootopia or maybe some other movie, and a lot of the photos that you see and a lot of t-shirts and little mugs and everything are this type of sloth. This type of sloth is also the slowest warm-blooded animal on earth. Their metabolism, I'm sure you guys have heard the word metabolism, but that's how they burn their energy, is the slowest of any warm-blooded animal. So they look like they're almost little robots. What's really interesting too is that they can't move their eyes like the other type of sloth. So they have to have two extra little bones in their neck. If you reach back and feel those bones in your neck, your vertebrae, they have two more than other mammals, including the other type of sloth, because they have to be able to turn their head like an owl. So they do it really slowly because that's how they see. And that helps them when they're eating because they're a little bit more active during the day. And so they have to eat their leaves and look for danger during the day. So by being able to rotate their head, because they are a little bit quieter and slower than the other type of sloth, they can hopefully be hidden from predators. There you go. You can see little Luna. She's got a little eye that's been injured. Her mother fell out of a tree in front of a car and was hit by the car. And when they got out and saw that she hadn't made it, they found a sweet little bundle of little baby, tiny newborn baby on her. And luckily, the only injury that Luna got was her eye. So she's totally a candidate for being released in another year or so. Right now, she's about 4 months old. She came in on the full moon, which is why we named her Luna. And she's doing really, really well. See how cute they are? And people ask me if that fur is wiry, but it's actually really soft. It feels like eyelashes. Very, very soft. They don't like to be around a lot of people or anything. They're very shy. Sloths are not into even being with other animals or other sloths. And so we really respect that with our sloths. And so unless we absolutely have to handle them, like the veterinarians or when they're being fed or whatever, we really give them the respect they deserve, which is to leave them alone and let them be wild. So here she goes. She's going to look and maybe see if there's another leaf around. Anyway, so back to the two-toed or two-fingered sloths. There they are, and you can see they're really, really different. Did you notice the difference? We can take you over to some babies that are the same age as Luna. These are baby two-toed or two-fingered sloths. So these guys have a little pig nose. Their fur is like a dog or a puppy. And once again, they have two claws in the front and three toes in the back, like all sloths do. They're much more active. They can be aggressive. They also have very sharp teeth. The other type of sloth only has chewing teeth, just like these guys do in the back. But these type of sloths also have four very, very sharp teeth in the front that can really bite. So we have to be really careful when we handle them. This is so they can eat the variety of foods that I was telling you about, fruit and bugs and bird eggs. Like I said, sometimes they might eat a little baby bird or a lizard if a lizard is sleeping on the wrong leaf to get grabbed. But they're not hunters. They just are called opportunistic, whereas they will eat protein if it presents itself on their food. So let's see, what else is the difference? These guys are more active during the night, but you can see they can be active during the day as well. They just kind of go in waves of sleeping, eating, climbing around. And one thing about sloths, that we have discovered is that because they are very solitary in the wild, they really don't play. They're not a playful animal. That's another reason why we tell people, please, 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 you would never want a pet sloth. They are not interested in playing with anybody or with any toys. They don't even like to be with other sloths. So the only time a sloth is with another sloth in the wild is when a mom and a baby are together, and that's 2 years. The baby separates her mom at 2 years old, and then they want nothing to do with any other sloth until it's a female that might have a baby. This is a different situation for these guys because, once again, they've lost their mom. So it really helps for them to have another sloth around to kind of take the place of their mom when they would be clinging to her and sleeping with her. So this is something that is forced upon them in captivity, in a captive situation at this point, but it really works. It really helps them. They need the comfort and the warmth of another sloth. And so it really works in our situation. But we respect that when they're getting wilder, that they don't want to be handled a lot. So after our babies are a little bit older, and like I said, they're eating a little bit more solid food, then and there's Howie. Howie's a reacher and he likes to bite. Um, and that's Gaspar, and that's Lala there, the little one on her back. So sometimes Howie even bites Lala and Gaspar, and then he has to be put in a timeout in his own little cub. So once again, these guys are wild animals. They, get wilder and wilder, even if they're used to us. Those of us who have to handle them when they're babies, they will eventually become very wild and even aggressive with us, which is what we want to see. We want to see them as wild sloths up in the trees and living a life that they would have lost out on because of their mom. You can see they do love to lick each other. Gaspar and Lala are very good friends right now. But by the time they're ready to go out into the world at 2 years old through our Saving Sloth Together program, they will be separating and not interested in hanging out together. So do you want to start questions or do you want me to keep talking?
I think that it would be fun to jump to some questions because we have a great group of classrooms, both on YouTube and live with us. So I think it would be awesome if we could work in as many questions as we could today.
I'm down for it.
All right, perfect. So that being said, I want to do a few introductions. Some of the classrooms on YouTube have started introducing themselves. So I'm going to try to get to as many as I can right now. So a shout out to Miss Rickard's class in Tucson, Arizona. We've got Madame Sideren's class and Madame Roy's class, grade 2-3s hanging out in Cobourg, Ontario. Miss Hoffman's second graders in Park Ridge, Illinois. Mrs. DeGroot's class in Florida. We've got Miss Manette's grade 6s in Thunder Bay. Mr. Dunlop and Mrs. Saunders, grade 7 and 8 class are hanging out with us. Who else do we have? We've got Miss Collins' group in Rhinebeck, New York. Lindsay, Ontario, looks like some 3rd and 4th graders with Mrs. Prozenko. Mrs. Woodley's classes in Brantford, Ontario joining us. We've got Queen Elizabeth in Belleville, Ontario with Mrs. Boys. Mrs. Knight's group in Tucson, Arizona is with us. We got a school joining us, a homeschool in Ontario. Tons of classrooms joining us. If I see any more shout outs, I'll make sure that we work those in as well. And I'm going to grab one of their questions to start. And they're wondering on YouTube about whether you've ever had to see the same sloth twice. So has there ever been a time where you've released a sloth and that same animal has come back to the rescue ranch? This is Mrs. Prozenko's.
Yes, we have. Sometimes sloths just don't do well if their injuries are very extensive. And we put them through a lot of different tests to make sure that they seem to be doing okay in the wild. But on rare occasions, they might have something that just interferes with their being able to stay out in the wild. We certainly try to give them every chance. But there have been times where we have one who was let out and then we just kept finding him at the base of the tree. We didn't know what was going on with him. And so we thought, well, you're safer in one of our huge pre-release enclosures and getting food rather than being very vulnerable to attack by, an ocelot or a snake or something. And so sometimes we do, usually they work out well. We actually have a really, really cool story where one of our females who was released um, about a year and a half ago came back and she'd had a fight with another wild sloth because they do fight with each other. They're very territorial in many ways. And so they brought her down. The only time you can safely get a hold of a sloth is, and even then it can be very dangerous because by then they're very wild and they try to bite and their claws are very sharp, is when they come down to go to the bathroom. I'll just do a little side break there, but they do come down out of the tree like once a week to go to the bathroom. They don't like to come down out of the tree. So that's when we have to take the opportunity to get that sloth, take it to our clinic at our release site, and have the vets examine it. If it's just something temporary, they stay at the clinic, and then we get them out as soon as we can. We had this female come in. They were examining her. She started climbing down, and they thought that she was about to go to the bathroom, and out came a baby. So it was quite a shock to everybody. And she and the baby are doing really well. We've got them here for the time being. We wanted to be sure that the baby was eating since she was a first-time mom. And the baby is gaining so much weight. And so she and the baby are going to go back to our release site and be released probably in a couple of weeks. So yeah, for various reasons we do. Sometimes some of the sloths just come back and they'll eat, near our release site buildings. And so we do recognize them. Plus they have radio collars. So we know the individuals, but even the ones that have successfully integrated into the forest will sometimes return and maybe get a quick little snack of carrots and green beans that the others that we have out for the ones that are just starting to be released. So did that answer your question?
Absolutely. So we're going to keep an eye out for more questions from YouTube, but for now, we're going to meet a couple live classrooms. So let's start off with Mrs. Penfold's group. They're joining us in Orangeville, Ontario. Looks like a lot of students. Let's get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, Orangeville? All right. Go ahead, bud.
How long did the sloth live for?
In the wild, and very little is known about sloth. It's only in the last few years since our organization and other organizations have started putting more time into them and studying them. And so we're finding out that it's always believed to be about 25 to 30 years. In a zoo situation, of course, it's a lot different because they don't have to deal with the harsh reality of being out in the jungle. And there was actually a zoo who had this type of sloth, the two-fingered sloth, which are the ones that are usually kept by zoos because they do have more of a variety of food. And she just celebrated her 50th birthday, if you can imagine that. So what they say about, relaxing in life, have a nice, easygoing, relaxed life is really working for sloths. We should all learn a lesson from sloths. So in the wild, though, it's a little bit more difficult, but we're guessing between 25 and 30 years for most of them.
All right. Great question to start us off. We're going to jump now to Mrs. Roll's class. They are joining us in Tucson, Arizona. Looks like some fourth graders. Let's get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, Tucson?
Good. Okay, we have a question. I think we can see her. Okay, come up here to the microphone, Gabby.
How many different types of species are there of sloth?
Very good question. Well, like I said, there's two basic types. There's the two-fingered and the three-fingered. There are 6 species altogether. And interestingly, even though they're quite different, they all occur from Central America and maybe Southern Mexico down into the northern parts of Brazil. So there are 2 species of the two-fingered and 4 species of the three-fingered. And one of them is really, really cool. They occur in islands off the coast of Panama, and it's a pygmy three-fingered sloth. So they're really tinier than the others. So there are 6 living species. There was a fossil species of sloth they found, and we're pretty sure it probably was a two-fingered. And believe it or not, if any of you guys like avocados or guacamole, you can thank a sloth because these sloths that occurred thousands of years ago traveled around Central America, Costa Rica, eating very, very primitive avocados. And if it weren't for these sloths traveling around, the avocados that we have today would never have been cultivated years later by man. So, like I said, if you guys like guacamole or avocado toast or something, you can thank a sloth.
All right, very cool. Let's jump to Canada now. St. Mary's, Ontario. We have some sixth graders hanging out with Mrs. Coles, and turn their microphone on for them. There it is. How we doing, sixth graders?
Yeah.
What is the youngest sloth you've ever taken in?
We have received little premature babies. They've had their umbilical cord, and so we know that they're brand new, newborn. In that case, they're fed by our founder, Leslie, and we also have a wildlife vet from Brazil who's an expert at the little teeny tiny babies. And so they have to be fed round the clock every 1 or 2 hours, very tiny amounts of milk because sloths do not drink water in the wild. They might under heavy, difficult conditions, but usually they just get the liquid from their food. So it really is tricky to feed the little tiny babies. And so they have to be fed with a little tiny 1 cc syringe very slowly with a little tiny nipple. And so, yeah, these guys are pretty tiny. I'd say they're about the size of maybe a hamster.
All right, we're going to jump back to YouTube now. A couple more classes to give a shout out to. We've got, let's see, Mrs. DeMayo's group joining us at Salem in Naugatuck, Connecticut. We've also got some third graders, Gilman's third graders, watching in Baltimore. And then I just lost sight of the other group. There we go. Mr. Henry and Miss Katrina's class are hanging out in Asheville, North Carolina. And let's grab a question from Mrs. Siderman's group. And this is David in Coburg. He is wondering if sloths are good swimmers.
Very good question. Yes, they are. They actually swim better than they crawl because crawling, their big curved claws interfere with climbing on the ground. But swimming is very natural for sloths. You wouldn't imagine it, but they, first of all, sloths have huge bellies. That allows them to stay up in the trees as long as possible so that they don't have to come down where they could be predated. So that belly acts kind of like a little buoyant factor, a little air balloon for them to not sink. And they also swim well, and believe it or not, they can hold their breath underwater for 40 minutes. So in a case of a flooded rainforest, they can still get to another tree. If something is attacking them, they could drop out of the tree and maybe be washed away from danger. And also those little sloths I was telling you about off the coast of Panama, and other sloths that live near, like in the mangrove swamp, can actually swim island to island. So that's a really good question. And I was shocked when I first heard it, but now I've actually even seen it on YouTube.
All right, great question. We'll come back to YouTube shortly for another one. But before we do that, we're going to meet some third graders with Mrs. Kun. They are joining us in Freehold, New Jersey. Let me get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, third graders? Good. All right, good to see you. Who's up?
All right.
How many animal species do you have?
How many animal species do we have? Oh my gosh. That kind of changes because we're always open for business no matter what kind of animal comes into us. Unless it's a monkey, then we send it to a monkey place or a large cat. But let me see if I can look to somebody and see if they have any idea, because that's a tricky one. I'll start talking about what we have. Maybe 50 to 80, because sadly, a lot of people have pets that they shouldn't have. And so if they get found out, then we get the animals that they are, that they've kept as pets and they shouldn't have. And so we have some animals that stay here and they're here for our education program, and others that we release. So it changes, but oh gosh, you know, we have some monkeys and we have an otter and a cool animal called the tyra and kinkajous and gosh, so many. We have an ocelot. She was a pet and she was confiscated. So, but once again, we also every day, it seems like, not every day, but it sometimes seems like that we can receive an injured animal or a little orphaned animal or babies, not just sloths. And so we take care of them, we raise them, and then our goal is to get as many out back into the wild. Did that answer your question okay?
All right, I think so. It's amazing. I mean, I'm not surprised there's so many species. Costa Rica has so much biodiversity. It's such an amazing place. So it's unfortunate that the animals do get hurt and have these confrontations, but really great that there's somewhere like the Toucan Rescue Ranch where they can have a second chance to be rehabilitated before being released back into the wild.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
You're looking,
Oh,
you're
sorry.
looking
Go
at
ahead, Denise.
Harriet. I was just going to say, you're looking up at Harriet, Aurora, Camilla, and Grumpy in the tree. Some of our teenage two-toed or two-fingered sloths. Just wanted to introduce you to some of our little cast of characters here.
All right, fair enough. We're going to jump now to Mrs. Gervin's group. They're fifth graders in Gap, Pennsylvania. Let's get that microphone turned on. How we doing, Pennsylvania?
Good.
Good.
What was the first type of sloth that came to the sanctuary?
The first type of sloth was Millie, our two-fingered sloth or two-toed sloth, Hoffman's two-toed sloth, the same type as these guys. And she came as a little baby. Like I was saying, you know, when they asked Leslie, our founder, to take the first sloth, she said, okay, but you know, it has to be big. I've never worked with sloths. And as I say, here, this little thing that was about the size of a guinea pig arrived on her doorstep. And Millie is still here with us. She's happy. She's like 13 years old and she loves hanging out.
All right, one more classroom to jump into, then we'll steal a YouTube question. So we're going to jump to Mrs. Gertzen's group. They're in Kansas. Looks like some fourth graders. Let's get that microphone turned on. Oh, there it is. How are we doing, Kansas?
Good.
What's your most recent rescue? What's your most recent rescue?
Well, we have another little three-toed sloth named Eclipse. She's a recent rescue. We have, let's see, oh gosh, we get so many. We have one named Oatmeal, although she's been a little while, but she's a fairly recent one. I don't know if you guys have seen our website, but she's a little electrocuted baby who's been doing really well. And I think we got a hawk the other day, but I wasn't around to see it. So it kind of changes, but I would say that Eclipse, our little three-toed sloth who looks like Luna, a little tinier, and probably Oatmeal are some of our most recent ones.
All right. So we've got a question online. I think this is a great question. They're wondering how, so this looks like Bryce Lemon's group. They're wondering how much money does it cost in a year to run the reserve?
How much money does it cost in a year to run the reserve? It's a lot. And we don't get funding from the government. So all of our money comes in from donations and people who come here to visit and see our animals and our wonderful program. But I don't know that one. I'll have to see if we can find out.
Well, I wanted to bring that up because you know, we always do a little something special with these events. We encourage classrooms who are tuning in live via YouTube, as well as the classrooms who are live on camera with us to do a little fundraiser for the Toucan Rescue Ranch. So for something as simple as raising $25, It's like a little symbolic adoption of a sloth, and we'll send your class a photo certificate from the Toucan Rescue Ranch. And then some classrooms go even further. Some classrooms do fundraisers, whether it's a bake sale or recycling cans or popcorn sales. We even had a classroom in Michigan one time raise $600. So if there's any teachers out there, any classrooms who want to raise $25 or do a fundraiser, shoot me an email and we'll make sure that we help your class get set up so you can help the Toucan Rescue Ranch continue helping our friends, like our scratchy friend up there.
Yes, that's Grumpy. Grumpy is the most beautifully, he looks like he combs his fur every day. I guess he kind of is with his foot. But yes, he loves to scratch his belly. This type of sloth always, there's something about their belly and they love belly scratches. So he's going to show you guys his grooming techniques. And you can see we don't wash our sloths, and yet they are always, unless they really, really came in, they were found in mud or something, they always look like they were bathed, but they aren't. It's just amazing that their fur is so perfect for where they live that they can be, we're going to go run, that they look, that they don't smell bad because they don't want to attract predators or anything. And they, just look like they've just come right out of the salon. So there they are. We have somebody else scratching too. I think that's Harriet over there. And just to answer that previous question, it's about $20,000 a month for us to run this place. So that times 12 would give you how much per year? So it's over $200,000 a year.
All right. So we're going to jump over to Miss Montgomery's group, 5th graders in Roscoe, Illinois. Let's get that microphone turned on. How we doing, Illinois?
Good. All right, Aiden, ready, buddy?
How many animals have you saved in the program? And how do you get into this field for a job?
What was the second question?
How do you get into this field for a job?
Okay, very, very good question. Okay, so gosh, once again, we've been running this program since Leslie founded the place in 2004. She and her husband Jorge, who's from Costa Rica, founded in 2004. And I've only been here for a year and a half, so I don't know the numbers, but I know every year we get more and more. I believe that probably in the last year or so, we've released or last couple of years, maybe over 200 animals. And once again, they range from little tiny possums and squirrels to monkeys, which of course we don't take anymore. We have our monkeys that are resident that can't be released, but it's too difficult to raise them. But there are hundreds. I honestly don't know the actual number, but once again, we release them as much as we can. The sloths just take a little bit more time because since they would be with mom for 2 years, then we have to take a little bit more extra effort to release them. Oh, we got a flower here in the bucket. And let's see, how do you get into this? Well, I worked at the San Diego Zoo for 24 years, and I raised everything from baby hummingbirds, little orphaned hummingbirds that people brought in, to all sorts of animals up to a giraffe. And so after I retired, I thought, wow, I still want to work with animals. And I found out that this place was looking for volunteers. So that was really cool. If you're interested in doing something like this, we have wonderful volunteer programs. I believe you have to be 18. And what I would suggest is what I did, because I loved animals my whole life. So I knew I wanted to work at the San Diego Zoo since I was 11. And so I just did anything I could to study about animals, to volunteer at rescue places, and just get familiar with handling animals and being around them. So now you guys have so many opportunities, many more than I did when I was your age. And so there are all sorts of wildlife conservation programs. You can do them through your schools. And just once again, if you're interested, read and research and learn about animals and and just take every opportunity you can to get experience, and then come on down. There are a lot of places like ours that really could use the volunteers. You get to, in exchange for volunteering, you get to work with some amazing animals, and lots of very cool things to be doing, and know that you're helping out the environment, that you're giving back to planet Earth, because these guys were all impacted by human interference, and so it's nice when people want to get into this line of work, whether as an actual job or as temporarily volunteering. You feel good. It's a great way of giving back and making up for some of the damage that we humans have done to the planet and to animals.
All right. So let's start jumping back into our classroom and see if we can take a few more questions before we run out of time today. Let's start with Mrs. Roll's group again. Let's see if they have another question for us.
Question? Okay, nice and close. Up to the microphone. Sorry, you weren't quite prepared.
No big deal.
Take your question with you. Talk right into the microphone.
Do all sloths have dark eyes?
Do all sloths have dark eyes? Well, they have golden eyes. So this type of sloth, I'd say kind of an amber brown. And the other type of sloth, the three-fingereds, maybe have dark eyes. So I would say there's a little bit of a range, but it's still kind of in the golden brown tones to dark.
All right. I see someone in Miss Gervin's class up at the camera, so I'll turn your mic on.
How many animals do you keep, and do you only specialize in sloths?
Oh gosh, you guys are I'm going to have to do my homework after this. We have about 40 to 50 animals, type, species. And once again, some of those are residents, just like with our older sloths like Millie, that were here before we were given the opportunity to release them. But we do try to get as many out as we can. And so we kind of started specializing in sloths. Like I was saying with Millie, when she came in back in those days, Leslie, our founder, was told, oh, you can never release a sloth. And she found that you actually can release a sloth because they don't tame down. The older they get, rather than like other baby animals that you raise and they get used to people, they don't want anything to do with people. They become very independent. And so in doing so, then she and another woman who started the Sloth Institute, and they started the Saving Sloths Together program. They went to the government and they said, please, if we convince you that we can do this, will you let us release sloths? So by doing that, they said, well, we'll put radio collars on them. And so that way you guys can know that we are actually successful in raising and releasing sloths. So at that point, there were not that many sloths, but it kind of became a huge sloth operation over the years, because once again, we're impacting the sloths. The more that we try to become, make a more convenient world for us, we're making it less convenient, and we're interfering in their habitat. And so sadly, we just don't seem to run out of babies coming in. We also do a lot of other animals, but it's kind of come down to a big sloth operation. And part of that too is because they do take a couple of years to be raised and rehabilitated and then released. Other animals we can raise, and it only takes a few months, and then they're put out in the wild as well. And so it looks like we're all sloths, but we've done toucans, we've raised baby toucans and owls and kinkajous, which are interesting animals, and possums and armadillos. So we don't totally stick to sloths. It's just that sloths take a lot more of our time and energy just by virtue of their behavior.
All right. Well, Mrs. Lenny's class in Ontario is actually wondering about one of the other animals, the kinkajou. They're wondering if you can describe a kinkajou.
Okay, a kinkajou is called a honey bear, and they are not nice little animals, which is fine because they're wild. But oh gosh, how do I describe a kinkajou? They have a prehensile tail. Yeah, they're part of the raccoon family, but they don't look like a raccoon. They're kind of a golden brown, and they have big eyes and big round ears, and they kind of they have a very bad disposition. They definitely, even with the babies, they'll scold you if you approach their little bucket. So you guys might want to look them up. They're really interesting. Like I said, they climb around, and I believe they're pretty much omnivorous, where they eat a lot of stuff. But yeah, they're a hard to describe animal, but check it out. It's Kinkajou.
All right. I'm sure we'll have some groups heading to Google right after we get off today to check out some pictures of
I
the
hope so.
Kinkajou. But for now, we're going to jump back to Orangeville and see if Mrs. Penfold's group has another question.
What would a sloth's fight look like?
A sloth's fight?
Yep.
It would be, you see those claws? Did you just see Aurora moving over to the branch? Claws on sloths are the most important thing they have. From the moment they're born till the day they die, they're clinging to something. And so they use those very sharp, very strong claws that hinge down. They don't grab you with their hand. They hinge their claws over your fingers, like when we have wild ones come in, and they could actually break your fingers. That's how strong they are. Oh, I think we're going to see a little spat here. You can see Aurora is biting Camilla, I believe that is, or is that Harriet? Here we go. And this is how they are. This is their nature. They bite each other, and like I said, this type of sloth has very sharp teeth in the front. They must have really strong skin, because with the fighting, they usually do not break the skin. I think that's with that thick fur that prevents, them from getting wet when it's raining, but they will. And one thing that sloths can do that's really interesting, that protects their eyes from the claws of another one if they're fighting, is that they can actually roll their eyeballs kind of back into their skull. And so that way, if there is a fight, especially between big males who might have huge claws, they can roll their eyes out, and then when it's safe again, they can roll their eyes back, forward. So it's kind of freaky if one comes in and you're going, is that sloth okay? And then his eyes, if he was injured. But yeah, they kind of hang upside down and swat at each other with those claws.
All right. Well, unfortunately, because it's always hard to leave this virtual field trip when we get to hang out with such awesome native species of Costa Rica, but we have reached that time where we need to start wrapping things up. But Denise, I want to just a huge thank you for spending some time with us, for answering questions. I think Zara might be there as well, maybe working the camera. So thank you for everything you did from the ranch to help make this event possible. A huge shout out to our classrooms on YouTube. We had lots of great classrooms across North America. Obviously, another huge shout out to our on-camera classes. If you do have more questions, send them to me, and I'm sure that we can get a few more of those answered. And for anybody on YouTube or the classrooms with us on camera, if you want to learn more about doing a little fundraiser or raising $25 for a photo certificate, send me a message and we can make that happen. But Denise, once again, thank you so much for an awesome virtual field trip today.
Thank you. You guys were great, wonderful questions, and we appreciate it.
All right, the last thing I'm going to do is turn on the microphone. So it's going to get loud. Boys and girls, huge goodbye and thank you.
Bye. Thanks again.
Okay. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. We've got lots more exciting events coming up this month. We hope to see your classrooms again, but for now we are signing out. Thanks everyone.